Imagine a world without apples, without strawberries, without coffee, a world where colorful meadows have turned into gray wastelands. Sounds like a disaster movie, and yet that could be our reality if one small insect disappeared. Bees. These unassuming creatures are among the most important beings on our planet. Their existence is closely tied to the balance of ecosystems and food production. And today I'll tell you why. It all starts with pollination. When a bee lands on a flower, tiny grains of pollen stick to its fuzzy body. When it flies to the next flower, the pollen is transferred. This simple act allows plants to create fruits and seeds. The numbers speak for themselves. 75% of the world's crops require pollination by insects. 1/3 of the food that reaches our table owes its existence to bees. Apples, strawberries, cucumbers, tomatoes, almonds, coffee, chocolate. All of these products exist because of the hard work of billions of bees. Every year, bees pollinate about 1/3 of the plants we consume. Without them, many of these plants could not survive. The process is deceptively simple. A bee lands on a flower to collect nectar and pollen. Tiny grains of pollen cling to the fine hairs covering its body. When the bee visits the next flower of the same species, some of that pollen is transferred to the stigma. Fertilization occurs. A fruit begins to form. What makes bees so effective is their loyalty to a single flower species during each foraging trip. A bee collecting from apple blossoms will visit only apple blossoms on that trip. This flower constancy ensures that pollen reaches the right plant, making pollination far more efficient than random transfer by wind. This relationship between bees and flowering plants is ancient. Fossil evidence shows that bees and flowering plants co-evolved over 100 million years. The flowers we see today, their colors, shapes, and scents, were shaped by the preferences of bees. And the bee's body, with its branched hairs, pollen baskets, and long tongue, was shaped by the flowers it visits. It is one of the most successful partnerships in the history of life on Earth. The work of bees also has an economic dimension. The value of pollination is estimated at over $200 billion per year. Over 200 billion. That's more than the annual budget of many countries in the world. And bees do it for free, every day, for millions of years. In some regions of China where bees have already gone extinct, people must pollinate fruit trees by hand, with brushes, flower by flower, tree by tree. This shows how invaluable the work bees perform every day truly is. But the role of bees doesn't end on our plate. 90% of wild plants require pollination. This means bees sustain the life of entire ecosystems. Plants pollinated by bees provide shelter and food for thousands of other species. Birds eat fruits and seeds that came to be through pollination. Insects live on plants that wouldn't exist without bees. Mammals feed on plants and fruits from pollinated trees. An ecosystem is like a large, complex web. Pull out one element and the whole structure starts to wobble. Bees are one of the most important nodes in this web. They support the lives of other organisms, creating complex food webs. Thanks to them, plants can grow, and in turn provide shelter and food for many animal species. Consider the humble blueberry. Without bee pollination, blueberry yields drop by over 90%. The bears that depend on blueberries before winter hibernation would struggle to build fat reserves. The birds that eat the berries would have less food. The seeds that birds spread would not be planted. One missing bee species can unravel an entire regional food web. This is why conservation biologists speak of bees as a keystone species. Remove a keystone from an arch and the whole structure collapses. Bees hold the arch of biodiversity together. There's something else that's rarely talked about. Bees are an indicator of the health of our environment. Their presence indicates the cleanliness of air, water, and soil. When bees disappear from an area, it's a signal that something is wrong, that the environment is contaminated or destroyed. You could say bees are the planet's thermometer, and that thermometer has been showing a fever for years. Their disappearance can be a sign of serious ecological problems that affect all of us. Unfortunately, bees are in serious trouble. In the last 50 years, we've lost half the bee population in Europe and North America. In Poland, 20% of colonies die every year. There are several causes. Pesticides, especially neonicotinoids, which attack the nervous systems of bees and disorient them so severely that they can't find their way back to the hive. Habitat loss. We're paving over meadows, cutting down hedgerows, turning wild areas into parking lots and shopping centers. Climate change. It disrupts plant flowering cycles so bees can't find food when they need it. And monoculture. Vast fields of a single plant are like a desert with one type of food for bees. Intensive agriculture has a negative impact on bee populations worldwide. The situation is made worse by a parasitic mite called Varroa destructor, which arrived in Europe in the 1960s and has since spread to every continent except Australia. Varroa feeds on bee larvae and transmits deadly viruses. A colony left untreated will typically collapse within 2 to 3 years. Beekeepers must constantly monitor and treat their hives, adding cost and complexity to an already difficult situation. Together, these pressures create what scientists call a perfect storm. No single factor alone would be fatal, but combined, they overwhelm the bee's natural resilience. The scale of the loss is staggering. In the United States alone, beekeepers reported losing about 40% of their managed colonies in the winter of 2022 to 2023. In Europe, surveys show that 1 in 5 colonies does not survive the winter. These are not natural fluctuations. They are the symptoms of a system under severe stress, and the consequences reach far beyond beekeeping. When managed honeybee colonies decline, the burden of pollination falls on wild bees, which are themselves declining for the same reasons. But there is hope, and most importantly, each of us can help. Plant bee-friendly plants. Lavender, sunflower, clover, phacelia. Even one pot on a balcony is a meal for a bee. Avoid pesticides. There are natural methods of plant protection that don't harm bees. Leave wild areas in your garden. Don't mow the entire lawn. Let clover and dandelions grow. Put out a water dish, a shallow plate with water and pebbles for the bee to land on. Support local beekeepers. Buy local honey. And above all, tell others, share knowledge, because awareness is the first step toward change. Earth Day, celebrated on April 22nd, is a perfect opportunity to start. Bees are not just insects, they are guardians of our ecosystem, architects of biodiversity, the foundation of our food. Their fate is inextricably linked to ours. By caring for bees, we care for ourselves, for our children, for the future of our planet. By supporting bees, we support all forms of life that inhabit our Earth. Bees are an invaluable treasure that we must protect. If this episode opened your eyes, leave a thumbs up. Subscribe to Hive Mind so you don't miss the next episodes. See you in the next one.